Most people think clutter after 60 means dusty boxes in the garage or knickknacks that never end. But here's the truth, the heaviest clutter isn't always what you can see. It's the clutter that hides in your routines, your relationships, even your sense of self. And if you've never looked at this other dimension of clutter, it could be silently weighing you down every single day. The truth is, many seniors across America clear out their attics, donate bags of clothes, even organize their garages, yet they still feel restless, burdened, or strangely stuck. That's because the most overwhelming clutter doesn't always pile up on the floor. It builds up in the invisible corners of life. It's the promises you made years ago that no longer serve you, the people you keep around out of guilt rather than joy, the buzzing of endless notifications that interrupt your peace, the roles you cling to long after you've outgrown them, and the thoughts you carry from the past that won't let you move forward. These forms of clutter don't collect dust, but they weigh down your spirit just the same. And unless you know how to spot them, you may never realize how much they're holding you back. Today, we're exposing 5 hidden clutter struggles you've likely never considered. These aren't the usual closets or junk drawers, they're deeper, sneakier, and more powerful. And I promise, at least one of them will make you pause, reflect, and admit, that's me. Before we begin, subscribe to Wise Aging Seniors, where we uncover the truths that help you live freer, lighter, and stronger after 60. Meet Isolda Rae, 67, a retired librarian living in Arizona. For decades, Isolda had been the picture of order. As a librarian, she made a career out of organization, cataloging books, labeling shelves, and helping people find exactly what they needed in the quiet corners of the library. When she stepped into retirement, she carried that same discipline home with her. She cleaned out her closets, cleared the garage of old boxes, and donated bags of clothes and furniture to charity. By all appearances, she had won the battle against clutter. Visitors often complimented her neat spaces, saying, "You're so lucky to have everything in order." But inside, Isolda didn't feel lucky. She felt strangely heavy, as if she were carrying invisible boxes stacked on her shoulders. The weight wasn't in her garage anymore. It was in her heart, her mind, and her everyday routines. She would sit at her kitchen table with her morning tea and wonder, why do I still feel so burdened when my home looks so clean? That quiet heaviness followed her from room to room, reminding her that something was still out of place. At first, she brushed it off as part of aging. She told herself maybe it was normal to feel restless, even after working so hard to simplify. But the unease wouldn't leave. She noticed it in the way she sighed when another invitation arrived in the mail, in the way her phone buzzing made her tense, in the way her thoughts circled back to the past when she was trying to rest. That's when she began to realize, clutter doesn't always look like piles of boxes or dusty antiques. Sometimes, it hides in places you don't expect. For Isolda, the real breakthrough came when she stopped looking at her shelves and started looking at her life. That's when she uncovered a new dimension of clutter, one that explained why her days felt so crowded even when her house was spotless. It wasn't about the objects anymore, it was about the weight of old expectations, relationships that drained her, digital noise that never stopped, outdated identities she clung to, and thoughts she couldn't put down. These weren't things anyone had warned her about. They were subtle, sneaky, and invisible. And yet, once she saw them for what they were, she realized they had been holding her back far more than any overstuffed garage ever could. It wasn't until Isolda confronted these 5 unusual forms of clutter that she finally began to breathe freely again. Her story proves that decluttering after 60 isn't just about cleaning your space, it's about reclaiming your life. Clutter 1. Expectation weights. For many seniors, the heaviest clutter they carry doesn't sit on a shelf or in a box. It lives in the invisible weight of expectations. These are the silent voices that whisper, I should still host Thanksgiving. I should still be the one to hold the big family gatherings. I should keep the large home so everyone has a place to return. I should keep saying yes because that's what I've always done. At first glance, this doesn't look like clutter at all. In fact, it often looks like love, tradition, or responsibility. But here's the hidden truth. These expectations are just like a closet stuffed with obligations. Every should that isn't examined drains energy, leaving no room for what actually brings joy in this stage of life. Isolda Rae felt this weight deeply. Every November, she would spend weeks planning Thanksgiving dinner. She prepared enough food to feed an army, even though her body no longer had the stamina she once relied on. She scrubbed her home top to bottom, pulled out the heavy roasting pans, and stood for hours at the stove, her back aching, her legs sore. By the time the holiday arrived, she was too exhausted to enjoy the very family she had worked so hard to serve. And yet, year after year, she told herself, "I should still do this. Everyone expects it. It's my role." But when she paused to reflect, she realized something shocking. No one in her family had ever demanded it. The pressure didn't come from her children or her grandchildren, it came from herself. She was clinging to an identity she had built years ago, when she was younger, stronger, and believed her worth was tied to her ability to do everything for everyone. This is what makes expectation clutter so sneaky. It hides under the noble disguise of tradition and service. Seniors across America find themselves saying yes to roles they've outgrown, afraid to disappoint others or afraid of what it might mean if they stop. But in reality, every unnecessary yes adds another invisible box to carry. And the older you get, the heavier those boxes feel. When Isolda finally broke this cycle, it didn't happen overnight. She began by questioning just one should. Instead of hosting the entire Thanksgiving feast, she suggested a potluck where each family member brought a dish. To her surprise, not only did her family agree, they loved it. They felt more included, more relaxed, and Isolda got to sit at the table with them, laughing, instead of rushing back and forth from the kitchen. This shift revealed something powerful: expectations can be renegotiated. Roles don't have to stay frozen in time. Just because you carried the weight in the past doesn't mean you have to keep carrying it now. By setting boundaries and redefining what was truly important, Isolda found a new freedom. She realized that letting go of old obligations didn't weaken her role in the family, it strengthened her presence in it. And here's the part that resonates for so many seniors: the world changes, families grow, traditions evolve. Holding on to every should of the past keeps you locked in yesterday, while life moves on without you. Releasing expectation clutter opens the door to something far more valuable: peace of mind, energy for the things you actually love, and the ability to enjoy the moment without resentment or exhaustion. So ask yourself, what invisible expectations are cluttering your days? Are you carrying roles you no longer need to play? Are you holding on to shoulds that no one even asked of you? Letting go doesn't mean letting people down. It means showing up in a way that's sustainable, joyful, and true to who you are today. And that's the kind of freedom that makes life after 60 feel lighter than ever. Clutter 2, relationship residue. Not all clutter sits on a shelf or hides in a drawer. Some of the heaviest clutter you can carry comes from people, outdated friendships, draining family ties, or unresolved conflicts that you keep around out of guilt rather than love. These are what I call relationship residues, emotional leftovers from the past that continue to take up space in your heart, even when they no longer serve you. Think about it. We've all had friendships that made sense decades ago, when our lives, routines, and values aligned. Maybe it was a work colleague you bonded with over coffee breaks, or a neighbor who once felt like family. But life changes, and sometimes those relationships don't change with it. They turn into something heavy, one-sided, or even toxic. Yet, many seniors feel an obligation to keep them, fearing that letting go will make them seem selfish or unkind. But the truth is, keeping relationships that no longer nurture you is no different from keeping broken furniture that clutters a hallway. You end up tripping over it, over and over again. Isolder Ray knew this weight too well. She had a longtime friend, Marcia, who had been part of her life since their children were small. In the early years, their bond was joyful: playdates, coffee chats, long phone calls. But as the years passed, Isolda noticed that every conversation left her drained. Marcia only wanted to complain, criticize, or pull Isolda into old gossip. Yet, every time the phone rang, Isolda answered out of habit and guilt. Afterward, she would sit in silence, feeling her peace evaporate. One day she realized this relationship wasn't supporting her anymore. It was cluttering her spirit. And it's not just friendships. Family ties can create relationship residue too. Many seniors feel stuck in roles where they're expected to constantly give, but rarely receive. Maybe it's the sibling who only calls when they need money, or the cousin who always brings drama to every gathering. These connections often remain out of loyalty or tradition, but they come at the cost of peace of mind. The danger of relationship residue is subtle but powerful. It teaches you to ignore your own needs. It convinces you that cutting ties or setting boundaries is cruel. But the reality is the opposite. Protecting your energy allows you to show up more fully for the people who truly matter. Isolda found freedom when she finally allowed herself to set gentle but firm boundaries. Instead of answering every draining phone call, she limited her conversations to moments when she felt strong enough to handle them. Eventually, she let the friendship fade, and while it was bittersweet, she felt an incredible sense of relief. That emotional space allowed her to invest more deeply in the relationships that brought her joy, her grandchildren, her book club friends, and the supportive neighbors who uplifted her spirit. Here's the truth: letting go of relationship residue doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you recognize that not all connections are meant to last forever. Some people are in your life for a season, not a lifetime, and that's okay. By releasing those ties, you're not discarding love. You're making room for healthier, more nourishing relationships to grow. So ask yourself, who in your life leaves you feeling lighter, and who leaves you feeling heavier? That answer alone reveals which relationships are clutter, and which are treasures worth keeping. Clearing away emotional leftovers can be just as powerful, if not more, than clearing out closets or garages. Because when your relationships are uncluttered, your spirit feels free, and your home becomes a true sanctuary again. Clutter 3. Notification overload. There's a kind of clutter that doesn't take up space on your shelves or pile up in the garage, but it can fill every quiet moment of your day. It's the endless buzzing, dinging, and flashing lights from smartphones, tablets, and computers. Facebook tags, political alerts, group messages, spam texts, shopping promotions, one notification after another, all demanding your attention. This constant stream of noise is what I call notification overload, and for many seniors, it has become one of the most powerful and most overlooked forms of clutter. It might not look like clutter, but the effect is the same. Just as a messy room makes it hard to relax, a phone that won't stop buzzing can make your mind restless and unsettled. In fact, researchers have found that every time a notification interrupts you, your brain needs several minutes to fully regain focus. Multiply that by dozens of alerts a day, and you can see why so many older adults feel mentally scattered without even realizing why. Seniors in the United States are now the fastest growing group on Facebook. It keeps us connected with grandchildren, long-lost friends, and community groups. But along with the benefits comes a tidal wave of noise, political debates that spark frustration, forwarded chain messages, scam calls pretending to be banks, and promotional texts reminding you of sales you never asked for. Instead of peace, technology becomes a constant tug on your attention, cluttering your thoughts even in the comfort of your own home. For Isolda Rae, this clutter crept up slowly. She loved scrolling through her feed in the evenings, seeing pictures of her grandchildren and sharing recipes with her book club. But the joy began to sour when her phone became a constant companion, demanding her time and energy. She would be reading in her armchair, finally feeling calm, when a political alert would buzz with breaking news designed to stir outrage. Minutes later, a group text would light up her screen with dozens of back and forths about trivial matters. Even at night, her phone lit up her bedroom with unwanted notifications. It felt like she never had silence anymore. One day, she realized she was checking her phone not because she wanted to, but because she felt compelled to, like the device was in charge of her, not the other way around. That's when she decided something had to change. Instead of tossing her phone aside, Isolda took control. She went into her settings and silenced half her apps. She unsubscribed from promotional texts, turned off breaking news alerts, and placed her phone in another room while she ate meals. At first, the silence felt strange, almost empty. But within days, her home felt calmer, even though nothing in the house had physically changed. The clutter wasn't in her drawers or closets, it had been in her notifications all along. This kind of digital decluttering is just as important as cleaning out your garage. In fact, for many seniors, it's even more powerful. Notifications chip away at peace of mind and make it harder to focus on the moments that matter, conversations with loved ones, hobbies, or simple quiet reflection. When the constant noise is gone, your mind feels clearer, your days feel slower, and you finally reclaim the ability to choose how you spend your time. So here's the question worth asking. Are your devices serving you, or are you serving them? If the endless buzzing leaves you feeling anxious, distracted, or drained, it may be time to declutter your notifications. Silence the ones that don't add joy or value, and you'll discover something remarkable. Peace doesn't always come from clearing space on a shelf. Sometimes, it comes from clearing space in your mind. Clutter 4. Identity clutter. Some of the hardest clutter to face isn't physical in the ordinary sense. It's emotional, tangled up in who we used to be. This is what I call identity clutter. These are the clothes, hobbies, or items that once defined us but no longer fit the life we live today. They aren't just objects, they are symbols of old chapters, and letting them go can feel like letting go of part of ourselves. Think about it. How many retirees keep work suits neatly hung in their closets, even though they'll never walk into an office again? How many golf clubs, tennis rackets, or sewing machines sit in basements untouched, quietly reminding us of hobbies we no longer pursue? For some, it's a piano sitting silent in the corner, waiting for hands that haven't touched the keys in decades. These things are not clutter because they're useless, they're clutter because they tether us to a version of ourselves that no longer exists. For Isolda Rae, identity clutter showed up in boxes of teaching materials she stored in her garage long after she retired from the library. Lesson plans, handouts, bookmarks, even reading programs she had designed years ago. Every box represented her passion and identity as an educator. She told herself she might need them someday, but deep down, she knew she wasn't going back. The truth was, she couldn't bear to let go of the woman she had been. Each stack of papers whispered, "You mattered when you were teaching. Are you sure you matter now?" That's the real trap of identity clutter. It convinces us that our worth is tied to old roles we've already outgrown. We cling to the stuff as proof that the past was real and valuable, but in doing so, we create a home filled with reminders of who we were, instead of space to grow into who we are today. The danger is subtle but powerful. Identity clutter keeps us living in yesterday, afraid to step into the freedom of today. It robs us of joy in the present, because every time we see those items, we feel torn between pride and sadness. Pride, because they remind us of what we once accomplished. Sadness, because they highlight what we no longer do. Isolda reached a turning point when her granddaughter asked why she kept so many boxes stacked in the garage. In that innocent question, she realized something. The best parts of her career weren't in those papers, they were already alive in the lives of the students she touched. She didn't need the clutter to prove her worth. Her impact had already outlived the objects. So, she began the slow process of letting go. She kept a small folder of her favorite lesson plans and one bookmark design she had always loved. Everything else, she recycled or donated. When the boxes were gone, she expected to feel grief. Instead, she felt lighter. Her garage wasn't just clearer, her heart was, too. Identity clutter is something many seniors in America wrestle with silently. It's not about laziness or disorganization, it's about fear. Fear of becoming irrelevant. Fear of losing connection to a role that once gave life meaning. But here's the truth, your value doesn't end when a chapter closes. It shifts. It evolves. It grows into something new. Clearing identity clutter doesn't erase who you were. It honors it, by freeing you to live fully as who you are now. The best version of you isn't the one trapped in boxes from 20 years ago, it's the one embracing today with open hands and an open heart. So ask yourself, what objects in your home belong to the person you used to be, not the person you are now? When you release them, you're not losing your past, you're making room for your present. And that may be the most liberating form of decluttering you'll ever do. Clutter 5. Thought pileup. Not all clutter is stacked in closets or stored in garages. some of the heaviest clutter seniors carry never leaves their minds. It's the endless replaying of regrets, the constant what ifs, the worries about choices made decades ago. This is what I call thought pileup, mental clutter that builds quietly until it weighs more than any box of old belongings ever could. Studies show that as people age, the tendency to ruminate, to dwell on the past or worry about the future, actually increases. That means instead of feeling lighter, many seniors feel mentally heavier with time. It's not because life has gotten messier, it's because the mind refuses to let go of unfinished business. Every regret, every unresolved memory, every anxious thought becomes another invisible item stacked on the shelves of the brain. The result is exhaustion, restlessness, and a constant feeling that peace is out of reach. For Isolda Rae, thought pileup became her silent struggle. Even after decluttering her home and simplifying her schedule, she often found herself sitting in her favorite chair, staring out the window, but unable to enjoy the stillness. Her mind would wander back to old mistakes, the student she felt she hadn't helped enough, the argument she never resolved with her sister, the dream of writing a book she had never pursued. These thoughts weren't just memories, they were mental clutter, looping over and over, leaving her drained before the day had even begun. At first, she tried to push the thoughts away, but that only made them louder. It was like trying to close the door on a closet that was too full, everything inside just pressed harder against the frame. That's when Isolda realized she needed a different approach. Instead of trying to silence her thoughts, she decided to give them a place to land. She began journaling for just 10 minutes every morning. The practice became her mental spring cleaning. Every regret, every worry, every what-if that cluttered her mind went onto the page. She didn't edit, she didn't judge, she simply wrote. To her surprise, the act of transferring thoughts from her head to paper lightened her load. She described it as pulling heavy boxes out of her mind and placing them somewhere safe, where they no longer weighed her down. This small daily habit transformed her mornings. Instead of starting the day burdened, she began it with clarity. She could enjoy her coffee, focus on her book, or call her grandchildren without a fog of old regrets hanging over her. Journaling gave her the gift of presence, something no amount of physical decluttering could achieve. Here's the truth, thought pileup is a form of clutter that often goes unnoticed. People see the tidy house, the organized shelves, and assume all is well. But the mind can be more crowded than any room. And unless it's cleared, peace remains out of reach. The good news is, clearing mental clutter doesn't require dramatic changes. It can be as simple as journaling, practicing mindfulness, or even taking a quiet walk while naming the thoughts you're ready to let go of. Each small act is like moving one box out of the garage of your mind, creating space for calm, joy, and clarity. So ask yourself, what thoughts have been taking up space in your mind for too long? Which regrets, what ifs, or fears are you carrying like heavy boxes you never set down? When you finally release them, you'll discover that freedom after 60 isn't just about clearing your home, it's about clearing your head. That's when life truly feels lighter. When Isolda finally faced these 5 hidden types of clutter, expectation weights, relationship residue, digital noise, identity clutter, and thought pileups, she discovered something no amount of spring cleaning had ever given her. For years, she believed that if her closets were neat and her garage was clear, life would feel lighter. And while those changes made her home look tidy, the heaviness inside her never really left. It wasn't until she started releasing the invisible clutter, the kind that lived in her roles, her relationships, her devices, her old identities, and her own thoughts, that everything began to shift. The transformation was gradual but powerful. By letting go of expectation weights, she gave herself permission to stop living by shoulds and start living by choice. By clearing out relationship residue, she created space for uplifting connections instead of draining ones. When she silenced the constant noise of notifications, she discovered that peace wasn't about moving to a quiet house in the country, it was about creating quiet within her own home. When she released identity clutter, she stopped holding on to who she used to be and began embracing who she was now. And when she tackled the thought pileup through journaling, she found she could finally sit with herself in calmness, instead of replaying regrets or what ifs. Her home hadn't changed much on the surface. Her shelves were still neat, her garage still clear, but her days felt different. She described it as living in a home that breathes. Her mind was sharper, her energy freer, and her presence with loved ones deeper. For the first time in years, she felt light not just in her surroundings, but in her spirit. And this is the deeper truth. Clutter after 60 isn't always stacked in your attic or boxed up in your garage. Sometimes, it's the weight of commitments you no longer want to carry. Sometimes, it's the digital noise that drowns out your peace. Sometimes, it's the identity you've outgrown but are afraid to release. And often, it's the thought loops that keep you stuck in the past instead of allowing you to enjoy today. Clearing those forms of clutter doesn't just make your home more livable, it makes your life more joyful. So as you look around your own life, don't just ask what needs to be donated, recycled, or thrown away. Ask yourself, what expectations can I set down? Which relationships no longer bring me peace? What digital noise can I silence? What identities have I outgrown? What thoughts am I finally ready to release? Those answers may open more space than clearing out an entire attic. And here's the most empowering part. Clearing these hidden forms of clutter isn't about losing. It's about gaining. You gain clarity. You gain time. You gain energy for what truly matters in this chapter of life. And you gain the freedom to live the years ahead not weighed down by the past, but fully present in the here and now. Which of these hidden clutter struggles surprised you most? Tell us in the comments, I'd love to know. And if this gave you a fresh way to see clutter, hit like, share it with a friend over 60, and subscribe to Wise Aging Seniors, because the lightest years of your life should also be your freest years.